Alright, so we're checking out the HGLRC DRAKNIGHT in this video. So 2-inch 2S micro. And I actually did a preview video of this model before it was released a few months ago over on my second channel. If you missed that video, I'm going to cover the specs again in this one, and I did compare it to the Hobby model baseline, which came out a long time ago. Specs in this one are very similar, but we'll go over everything that this particular model has. So first off, we'll start off with the motors here. These are some 1003 10,000 kV motors. So the flight controller board on here is an all-in-one, has the video transmitter, 25 to 400 milliwatts. It's got a built-in Express LRS receiver, serial, and it's version 3. It's got the 4-in-1 ESC. I think it's BLLES 16.8. It does have RPM filter enabled, 12 amp ESCs bursting to 15 amps, and flight controller is an F411. And this board is very, very similar to the one that's on the Hobby model. It's got the exact same camera in here as on the Hobby model. It is the Caddx Ant. It's the nano version. It's got the screw holes on the side, and you can see here that the camera does stick out a bit there in front of the frame, although it looks like you could slide it back because it does have this screw hole here is you're able to put that back, but I'm not 100% sure why it was installed that way. The frame is a single piece of carbon, about 2 millimeters thick. It's also very similar to the one in the Hobby model, but the Hobby model has a little bit better motor protection on the ends here. So if you go back to that video, you'll see that the amount of carbon on the corner here where the motor is significantly more, which will definitely help out in a crash. XT30 for the battery connection. Got a TPU battery tray here on the bottom. They have two different sizes on here, so they have a smaller one and a larger one. Small ones will fit these 2S 300 milliamp hour LiPos and like a 2S 450. These fit in pretty nicely, so no problem in terms of getting these in here. Flight time on the 300, pretty aggressive freestyle, is about 3 minutes. On the 450, if you're doing sort of a cruising flight, not really aggressive flying, you can get up to 8 minutes. I got up to 8 minutes on this battery. The longer 520s do fit in here, so you can see compared to the 450, it's a little bit longer, but it will stick out the front here. So if you slide these in, the battery connector here will prevent it from sliding back any further. So if you want to use longer batteries, could present an issue. For example, if you want to use like this 852S, it's a little bit longer. Well, it's about the same length, but you're going to probably want to go with the bigger battery tray to go with the 850. So you can get more flight time with these bigger battery trays and the bigger batteries, but basically it doesn't fly that great because the heavier it gets, the less performance you're going to get out of this setup here. So I originally flew this with these little decorative TPU parts that were on top. So there's one in the back here, one in the middle, and one on top here in front. And I flew it with the 300 and the 450 with the decorative pieces and the weight as it came out of the box. I didn't want to change it for the review. It was 46 grams with the decorative pieces, and then when you remove all of these little parts here, that reduced the weight to 44 grams, and that is what they advertise on the website. It's like 44.3. So you're basically carrying around a lot of extra weight, and I think extra weight's coming from these metal side cages here. These aluminum, CNC aluminum side plates that basically hold the camera and these little decorative pieces and the antenna. So what you get here in a nutshell is on the DRAKNIGHT, even with all the stuff stripped off, it's 4 grams heavier than the baseline. The baseline, it was coming in at 40 grams, but it came with a bigger motor. So it came with, instead of a 1003 motor on the DRAKNIGHT, the baseline comes with an 1103 motor, and also at a slightly higher kV. So it was 11,000 kV versus 10,000 kV. So ultimately, as I had predicted in my other video, the performance, accurate performance of the baseline is better than the DRAKNIGHT. because of the lower weight and the bigger motor. So it weighs less and has a bigger motor on top of it, so the performance is better. Now, you can look at the video footage. I actually flew this at the same spot that I flew the baseline many months earlier, and I try to fly it in a similar way. And if you just look at the video side by side, I guess to the untrained eye, most people won't be able to tell much difference, and it looks pretty similar in terms of the video that's been recorded. But when you're flying it around, in terms of the throttle feel, it takes a lot more throttle, and you have to hold on the throttle longer to get those similar types of tricks to be performed because of the additional weight and the smaller motor. So those are things that I just predicted. Now, the thing that I wasn't sure about was the efficiency, and I had a feeling that this smaller motor was going to be more efficient, and I was actually surprised at how efficient this was. So when I tried the 2S450 on the baseline, I didn't get nearly 8 minutes at all. I think it was something like 5 minutes on a similar flight. So the higher kV and the bigger motor, while it gives you more accurate performance, when the trade-off is that you get less in terms of efficiency. So with the 2S450, you can get up to 8 minutes of flight time, even with the extra weight. And so that's, I think, that the benefit of the lower kV and the smaller motor is for the same amount of battery in terms of carrying around energy, you're going to get a much longer flight time. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for. The other thing that, of course, is that with the DRAKNIGHT, the camera is sitting forward here, so the props aren't going to be in your field of view, whereas on the baseline, the camera is more centered, and the props do kind of show up at the bottom of your camera field of view. Also, some people say that the board here is a little bit more exposed, because I suppose if on a flat surface it's not going to hit anything, but it is exposed to like tree branches, that can come in at a sharp angle like this, and it could knock off, for example, the ceramic antenna, or hit some of the parts here, maybe knock off some capacitors. This is easily remedied by just putting some foam or tape over this. It's not a big deal. But yeah, some people will say that's a deal breaker because this board is exposed. But the bottom line is, if you're looking for no props in view, this is the frame to go for. If you're looking for more efficiency, a lot more flight time, you don't really care so much about acro performance, this is the frame to go for. And if you don't really care about flight time so much and you want more accurate performance, then yeah, you want to go for the baseline. Those are all things that I spoke about in my sort of preview review on my second channel. So again, go check out that video if you happen to miss it. So I haven't tested the 2S850 with a bigger battery tray yet, because I'm going to have to mod this where this battery connector doesn't come out here where it's being blocked by the buzzer. I'm going to have to probably move it probably to the inside over here somewhere, so it comes out the side, and that way the batteries can go basically the full length of the quad, and probably maybe even stick a little further back behind like this. So I'm going to have to do some modifications. That battery tray will definitely stick on here, no problem. It just comes on with some screws. There's a couple of things I think should be fixed here in terms of this build that I think might cause problems. Now, the pit tune out of the box in this was fine because the props were brand new and had very few vibrations. It's actually really quiet, surprisingly quiet. It doesn't make hardly any noise at all, especially on the lighter 300 milliamp hour 2S. But I think in the future, if you crash and have some bent props, if the props are kind of chewed up and there's more vibrations, you're going to have a problem where the motor vibrations are going to come through to the flight controller at this point here where the connector is, because there is basically, it's the connector sitting right on top of the carbon. There's no gap there. And I think they made a mistake here. They're supposed to, this little rubber grommet here, they use the shorter end on the bottom and the taller end on top. This needs to be flipped over, so there should be a little bit of a gap here, and then that will also force the USB port up. So it's kind of close, so the battery is actually touching the USB port in the way it is right now, because as you can see, it isn't level with the carbon plate, and that's because they didn't install this rubber grommet correctly. So that needs to be fixed. I mean, I could do that. It'll take me like 5 minutes, not a big deal, but I will be doing that just to have that little bit of a gap there. Obviously, you can save some weight by getting rid of the connector. I'm not sure, the wires are twisted, but I'm not sure if there's enough length to do that, and direct solder the motor wires to the flight controller board, then this connector won't be an issue at all. So I may do that for later, but you know, it seems to work fine for now. But I think what I want to do is, again, move this battery connector over here, put on the bigger battery tray, go for the larger 2S850, and then they do supply this TPU port that goes here for camera mount. Although I think I will probably go for a different camera mount than this, and just so I can move it a little bit more forward, and maybe put like a run cam thumb on here or something like that, so I can get some HD footage. And for just cruising around, I think this would be kind of nice. You get a lot of, you could probably get a pretty long flight on the 2S850, and be able to carry that little HD camera around and get some HD footage. Sort of, I think this is about $40-50 if they still sell this, and this is like running around $115. So yeah, it's a pretty cheap little HD cruiser setup. Now I will have a video out a little bit later on this new HGLRC C1 remote, Express LRS up to 500 milliwatts. It's very similar to the GEPRC tiny radio that came out a while back. This one comes with version 3 firmware, which works with this receiver that's on this particular quad, which is a serial receiver. This will work with any Express LRS version 3 serial receivers. It will just work out of the box, no problem. You just have to bind it up. But I've run into an issue where this one does not work with Express LRS receivers are SPI based. So if you on the latest version of Betaflight with the version 3 Express LRS firmware, but it's an SPI receiver, this does not connect to those quads. So if you want to get this for like tiny whoops that are using the older SPI receivers, don't get this radio, at least not right now. I think it will require a firmware fix. I'll have a review on this one later if they give me some more information or background on why this isn't working. It does work on regular Express LRS receivers, but yeah, I just wanted to point that out, that it has an issue right now on version 3 firmware that's SPI based. So when I get to the bottom of that, I will talk about that in the review. But right now, I'm going to hold off on this review for a little bit. Although it works fine with this one here with a standard serial Express LRS version 3 receiver, and it's a pretty nice setup here for like $50, I think $55. And you can actually, it does have a nano module bay here in the back. You can actually connect up a crosswire nano module. I do have to still test that still, but they just show that picture of that on their product page. So you could potentially use this with crosswire, which you can't do with the GEPRC radio. But again, I'll have a full review on this radio later. I think that's going to cover for the review of the DRAKNIGHT. I think I will be doing some mods on this one. You may see this one in a future video, maybe on the second channel, with some sort of HD camera on top. Because I think for this, setup here, for carrying an HD camera here in the front, I think it's going to work out as a pretty nice little tiny cruiser at the park. Get an HD video, it's super quiet, not going to bother anybody. But again, if your priorities are acro performance, if you want to be doing freestyle with something like of this size, I would recommend the baseline over that. But if you're looking for flight time, again, I would recommend this one over the baseline. All right, that's going to cover this video. Talk to you guys in the next one.